State elections. But at the top, where we normally vote yes or no on a school board or a school bus referendum, there's going to be several constitutional referendums at the top of this November's ballot. One of them is the Clean Air and Water Act. And who would ever vote no for clean air and clean water? The problem is it's going to be enshrined in the New York State Constitution as a right of every person to have clean air and clean water. If you know anything about New York State, we're the most litigious state in the country. And I think litigation in New York State through awards and attorney's fees and expert witness fees, everything that goes along with that, usually the average is it costs about each person in New York State $6,000 in added costs through everything. So in November, earlier this year, I voted no, and I was one of 27 people who voted no for the Clean Air and Water Act. And I did that knowing that the New York State Farm Bureau also wanted that. They were opposed to that. Sitting to my right in the Assembly chamber is a dairy farmer from Wayne County, New York. And off to my left, a few seats away, is John Lamondes, who is a sheep farmer, and he takes care of the northern part of Chenango County in his district. And they explained to me how detrimental this could be to agriculture. Clean air, clean water. Again, it was hard to vote no until it was explained to me that it's possible for litigation if you're cutting in the fall and you create dust as you're transporting. Somebody has an asthma attack. That's an extreme example. The example Mr. Lamondes gave was Sherburne pet foods. Depending on which day you're in Sherburne and what the mix is that they're making, it's pungent, and I'm used to it. I still work in Sherburne often, but an outsider could be offended by that, and it could be a cause for action. And clean water, it's right. Yesterday we voted to ban pesticides. They're going after pesticides like it's a death sentence for that whole industry. And I sat in on a informational presentation about pesticides. If we did away with the pesticides that they want us to do away with, we're going to need to build a lot of hospitals, because there's going to be so many allergic reactions, so many detrimental health issues that are going to be caused by the weeds. Pesticides are not a poison if they're used properly, and all of them are. So this summer, no summer youth camp can treat anything with a pesticide if there's going to be children there, and they can't pre-treat. So it's a culture clash. It's not a political party clash, because several of the upstate majority party votes along with my party. But anyway, I don't want to drone on for everything. There are some good things in our $212 billion budget. Agriculture came out pretty good in there. School boards got a 1-year infusion. I hope they use it wisely, because next year it may not be there. I don't know if we're going to get another federal government infusion. The hunting, 12-year-olds being allowed to hunt with a adult family member is a good thing. That's a true conservation measure, because we know that hunting is dwindling down, and there are more and more deer. They're spreading sickness, they're ruining crops. So if we can cull the herd in a humane manner, and also people can enjoy the meat, that's a good thing. And we're starting to bring up the next generation of hunting. I guess that's about it. I don't want to take up too much time from your meeting, but I appreciate the invitation to be here.
Well, we appreciate you coming, because it's a good chance for us to update. And I don't know, are there any comments that people want to make to take back, for you to take back?
Well, and I do that. I spent a lot of time on the phone twice talking to Kudik's Bee Farm, because there was a pesticide bill there that I was concerned was going to hurt them.
Right.
I am your voice. I am their voice. And when I saw this, and again, they give all of these things nice names. This was called the Birds and Bees Act, but it was a anti-pesticide act. And when I saw birds and bees, first thing I think of is Kudix, because a few weeks ago I brought up 200 yards of honey to the state assembly, and I've been giving it out like I found out I can give gifts, I just can't receive. And so I still have a few cases left in my office, but I've been giving that out to everybody.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get in trouble, but I so badly wanted to take a picture of Kudix honey jar up on the speaker's dais where I gave it to the speaker of the assembly, and it sat there the whole time. But I thought if I took a picture and then sent it to Kudix, it might get out on the internet. And anyway, then I'd be in trouble for, So
Yeah.
anyway, but it sat there all day, and it did my heart good knowing that it's, right, not only from the district, my hometown.
Right.
But so I am your voice. I try to be. I contact people in Delaware County, Broome County, all over. I want to get their input because I'm learning. The devil is always in the details. Every bill is designed to vote yes. So if you want to vote no, you have to physically vote no because it automatically logs me as a yes. So I have to counter that. And every bill always has just the first paragraph or maybe even the first couple of sentences, and it always sounds good. An act to protect and give the right of clean air and clean water to every New York. Who's going to vote no on that?
Right.
But when you read down the thousands of words and hundreds of pages, you find out this is actually detrimental. And that's when I say it's work. It's very mentally taxing. And I don't have a large staff, but I have a good staff. And I'd rather have good than quality than quantity, and I have that.
Good.
But if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy.
Joe, yes, thank you for coming today, and thank you for the information on that Clean Air and Water Act. We need to know these things because we're not going to have the opportunity to read down through hundreds of pages of a law or a proposed law. So, we appreciate and need that input from your office. So I want to say thank you for that. And we can help spread the word to some degree, but
Well, and actually, it was the Farm Bureau of New York State that enlightened me. They sent me a letter explaining their opposition to this, and which got me to dig deeper into it. And there's 150 assembly members, and more than 100 of them are from the Tappan Zee Bridge South. So upstate is only a third represented. We only have a third of the vote.
So upstate could all vote against the bill and it would still go through.
Yes, sir.
Sure, it happens a lot of times.
No bill comes to the assembly floor without passing. None. If it goes up on the big tally board, it's going to pass. And they don't bring anything. And there's an interesting thing. Everybody in the assembly has the power to lay aside anything that comes up for more. It's too big. I need more time to read it. It's a stall technique to take it off the floor. And that's what I was taught when I first, if you're not comfortable voting because you're not educated enough, lay it aside, and they'll do that. And anybody has that power. But now I've noticed that normally only my party lays things aside. And I've seen a couple of times the speaker on the other side, the Democratic leader, will lay aside. And so I asked, what does that mean? And that means they don't have enough votes to pass it. And so it was, again, I'm a freshman there, and they said, nothing goes on that board unless it's going to pass. So before it goes on the board, they have to announce it. And after that announcement, anybody can say lay aside. They lay aside their own because they're still trying to conjure up enough votes. And that's because of again, it's not the parties, it's the geography of the assembly. I'm sorry.
This is Brad Vickers. Thank you, Assemblyman Angelino, for coming to the meeting and updating us on this. And I believe we have a letter in opposition from the ADC committee, and we're moving one forward, I think, from this committee. Isn't that correct?
We will discuss it.
Well, read it, educate yourselves, and decide. Again, It started with me with the two farmers on either side of me, and then the Farm Bureau sent a letter. I was going to mention something else, and I can't remember what it was. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate your confidence, and I apologize for missing one of the phone-in. We've been working very late. If sometimes we start at noon and we don't get. Last night was our go home day, and I don't think I got out of there until after 4
Right.
in the afternoon. During the budget, we were staying all night, just as I expected. And a word about our budget. It's $212 billion, and that's the largest budget in the country. New York is fourth in population. First is California, and I think their budget might be the same or slightly larger. If I said ours is the largest, let me explain why I say that. California is the most populous state, then Texas, then Florida, then New York. New York's $212 billion budget is more than Texas and Florida combined. It's not sustainable.
Can't we send them Governor Cuomo and let them deal with him?
Well, I don't know what's going to happen with that. I remember what I was going to tell you. My district, 122nd district, same as Cliff had. It's probably going to change at the end of this year. I don't know if I'll even have a district in which to run, or I don't know if I'll be in a district with 3 other Republicans who are all currently seated. I don't know how it's going to work out. So if this is my one time in the assembly, I plan to speak up. Nobody in Albany gets me elected. It's everybody here in the district that puts me there. So my district is 4 counties: Broome, Chenango, Delaware, Otsego. It's almost all of Broome County, half of Chenango, half of Delaware, and just a sliver, 3 towns of Otsego. I had a call from a farm family saying that we all know how tough it is to farm. They owned the property because it had been in the family since the 1870s, and they decided they had an offer on a portion of it, and they sold it to a company that's going to put solar panels. And you see solar panels springing up everywhere, locally, all over the country. But now, after they sold it, I think they have some sellers' regret because they found out they made a very good profit. They made a deal they couldn't refuse. But now at the federal level, the capital gains tax is going to take so much of that, it's like they gave the property away. And they're just heartbroken. So, if you have property and you're approached, think long and hard about that. What we have right now is a decline in farming. So the land is available. It's private property, and they can do whatever they want with their property within the local zoning. But we also have state laws that if it's a green energy project, it overrides the local zoning. And so the handwriting's on the wall where that's going. And again, I have people in Delaware County that have all of their water siphoned off, and they're under draconian rules in Delaware County regarding their property use. Now, New York City basically funds everything for them. If they have a farm and it's got some runoff going into a tributary, they will build them a digester and a sewage treatment plant. But it's the freedom, that they're missing. And, you're sort of beholden to whoever has the most money. But Delaware County has all of their water regulated. And now in Chenango County, we're starting to have I think they're going to start clearing trees soon in Sanford, Deposit, Windsor area, and Guilford for the wind generation. And there's solar farms showing up where, generations of people cleared fields, and in a matter of months, it's turned into aluminum and chemical reactors for the sunshine. And there's a lot of people who just feel like upstate New York is being colonized for the good of New York City. Because we all of our energy comes from natural gas generation, hydro, and some nuclear. But down there, where they use most of the energy, they're closing the nuke plants and they shut off the pipelines. So they're using our resources and our beautiful bucolic views for their good. And I never realized, those aren't my words, but they fit very well. They said we are just turning into a colony for New York City.
Obviously, we had a recent.
Assemblyman Angelino, I've got a question for you. I was at a conference call with Assemblywoman Lepardo, and one of the bills that she mentioned is the Assembly Bill 6967, the Cahill Bill, Climate and Community Investment Act, which is opposition to any types of carbon-based fuels, which could potentially raise our cost of fuel 55 cents or more. She is indicating the governor isn't going to sign this. Your thoughts on, are you familiar with that bill?
Everybody's familiar with that bill. Thank you, Brad. That, yes, and I wrote it down thinking you were going to catch me with one I wasn't aware of, but as soon as you said that, it's more than just fuel. Again, the devil's in the details. There's certain goal dates that they have that they don't want any natural gas furnaces in homes, hot water heaters. They want everything electrified. Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, wood and also coal, any of those things, as you know, what we normally depend on agriculture for fuel, this would be after that.
Anything dealing with carbon being produced for burning is very evil in the eyes of many, and those many are in a position to outvote me. Again, it's an agenda that they have that is likely going to happen. It's probably without their interference. If we truly believe the United States is a capitalist market, and that's the market drives innovation, but they are very impatient and they want it now. So we are getting these things forced down our throats. We passed a law. I've never seen a law that is like wishful thinking, but we passed a law that every vehicle in New York State has to be carbon zero by 2035. It doesn't include farm equipment and heavy trucks, but every passenger car and light duty truck. But it's only a goal law. It's not, because they're not sure if it can really happen or not, but that's how impatient they are to get this passed. And, if I'm kind of excited to get an electric vehicle. I have range anxiety. I'd like a hybrid so that I can not have to stop and wait. But I'm kind of excited because I bought a new vehicle. My 3/4 ton pickup truck, crew cab, does not fit in the assembly parking spaces. So I had to buy a vehicle from Mr. Marone, God bless him, before he passed. That vehicle I bought just before Christmas is pushing 12,000 miles. So it's 5-6 months old, and I've got a year's worth of driving already because I work in Albany and my district is so huge. So I'd sort of like to have a better fuel mileage, but I have that anxiety of where do I charge it and how long does it take? So eventually the market will take care of this. I'll have a 400 amp charger in my garage. My electric bill will go up, my gas bill will go down, but I don't want it force fed on me instantly. I want to ease into it, and but the people in charge right now are very impatient. And as for Donna Lepardo, I just want to mention how helpful she has been. She's in the opposite party, but she's very helpful. My district almost totally surrounds her district. Not completely, but like 75%. So whatever's good for Donna's district is usually good for my district. And she's a true friend of mine and also to the agricultural. So I'm glad you brought up her name, Brad.
Yes, she has been very, as you noted, very helpful and supportive of agriculture. We appreciate that. The other issue I have with that is biodiesel and the biofuels themselves. We used to have 3 biodiesel plants here in processing plants here in New York. Now we have none. And it's mandatory that percentage of biodiesel is used in furnaces in New York City. So in my opinion, they're going the wrong direction. And I believe your opinion as well.
There is a biodiesel bill that is coming up, and I'll be voting in favor of that to assist with agriculture. And I don't have the details on it. I just know I've seen the first 2 sentences, And I know that's probably going to be helpful.
Great.
So we actually had a farm accident here in Chenango County recently, and the only reason probably that he's alive today is because a Pennsylvania medical helicopter was able to transport blood. Do you see any hurdles in that new bill to allow New York State helicopter medevacs to transport and infuse blood?
So the biggest hurdle, and God bless Travis Flanagan, he's a miracle man. The hurdle will be that it happened in my district and Senator Akshar's senatorial district. So it's such a good thing that I asked Ms. Lepardo to bring it to the floor, because honestly, very little that a Republican will bring to the floor is ever going to get passed through committee, much less on the floor for a vote. So Donna Lepardo, Kerry Warner, Senator Hinchy are all helping with that. And I've talked to medical helicopter people. When I was the fire chief in Norwich, I had the ambulances. I knew it was a big deal. If we had a patient in the ambulance that was being transfused blood, we had to have a specially trained nurse ride with us, even though paramedics are fully capable. But the air ambulances are easily poised to do this, because their flight team is as highly trained as an ER staff. And so it shouldn't have too many hurdles. There's a lot of support behind it. When you go around talking to people, you show them the news clip of Travis, and it has many co-sponsors and multi-sponsors, which usually is a good sign. But I don't dare guarantee anything, but it does look favorable. And again, that's just something it took Travis's legs coming off for it to highlight that. And he was so lucky that Pennsylvania helicopter just happened to be in the air, and we got it, because if it was a New York helicopter, they wouldn't be allowed. Mm-hmm. And the company that runs that, the gentleman who is a an operations person for that, lives in Whitney Point, but now he's out in the Hudson Valley area. He knew everything about this. And he said that was one of our helicopters. If it had been one of our New York helicopters, we wouldn't have had the blood with us. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's a good thing out of tragedy.
Well, while we're talking about emergency services, what can we do to get more volunteers for EMS and so forth? I think one of the biggest problems is it takes so much training. They haven't got time to do the training and the volunteering.
So I was on the Norwich Emergency Squad from the mid 80s till about 1993. And I have a picture in my phone of our team. There were 40 people in the picture, and then below it, it says not present for the photo. And I think there was 7 more. That was just Norwich. And by the end of that, when I was a brand new police chief, I was still driving the ambulance, because I was in the same building, and it would tone out 3 times. So the training is long and hard. It's not easy, but nothing in life is, if it's worth it, it's probably hard and takes some time. The feeling you get back from helping strangers in the middle of the night, I enjoyed it. You enjoy it to a point, but you start feeling guilty when you can't go out and make the call because I'm in my car, or I've had a drink, or I'm with my family going in the wrong direction, and you start feeling guilty. And to get away from that feeling of guilt, you just say, I can't do it anymore. If we had more people doing it, yes, it would be easier. But at the same time that our aging population is needing more medical care, our population is going down, and it's the younger people that we're losing, and those are the ones we need. So without incentives to get more people into volunteer emergency squads, you're going to rely on paid service. The majority of ambulance calls in my district, particularly Chenango County, are by paid ambulance. Greene, Norwich, AMR, Sherburne, New Berlin, and now Oxford. And I think that's the wave of the future. I don't think you're going to see too many volunteers. What we should be worrying about, I know there's a task force being created on rural medical care. I think it's good that they're doing it, but I think we all are going to know what the answers are. If we want to be forward thinking, we should be worried about volunteer fire departments, because they're next. The training's not as hard, but the time commitment is greater. So I'm still a volunteer fireman, and I've missed training, and I feel guilty about it. And if I miss too much training, I'm done. So I have to make it up, and it's a big commitment. But we should start worrying about volunteer fire service pretty soon, because if we had to pay for the same quality of coverage, it would be billions of dollars in New York State. You know, if you think about it, you know, all of the same level of fire protection. I can't remember what it is. If New York State is 67,000 square miles, I think 50,000 square miles of it are protected by volunteers. The population, the population, New York City is the biggest part and they're protected. But upstate, it's a very small percentage of the population that is protected by paid fire. You know, just like Chenango County, you know, the 10 or 12,000 people here in the Norwich area have paid fire, but no one else does. But the ambulance it's an ugly situation.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Just as briefly as I can. So, Joe, right now it sounds like we kind of have a one-edged sword in New York City and downstate, and really more urban domination of our legislature. And they're pushing through a lot of legislation that's hurting farmers. I think we're really lucky we have Donna Lepardo where she is, because for the first time in a few years, ag things in the budget went through without being zeroed out by the governor, and without being, you know, like basically they used to zero all the ag programs out, and then they'd force the Republican Senate to put it back in. And so Donna, I think, has been very helpful, and I know that you are part of keeping her up to date. There could be some opportunities, or there should be some opportunities, if downstate is so anxious to move forward. You know, there might be some things that they could do for agriculture that would help farmers financially. You know, carbon wise, if they would give farmers some funds to plant trees, or just to let fallow land grow up into trees, that could create an income stream for farmers. And, you know, just it's what they're trying to do, sequester carbon. Even if it's Ken Ryan, if he measures his, or Terry, if they measure their organic matter in their soil at, let's say, 3%, and they put it up to 5%, they sequestered tons and tons of carbon. You know, if they could get paid for some of those things, like an example would be plowing down putting in a cover crop and plowing it down to increase organic matter. If they could get paid for some of those things, you know, downstate would be willing to pay farmers to do some of the work to achieve their environmental goals. That it could be less of a win-lose and more of a win-win. Who would we talk to you about that? What can we do to try and get some ideas that are more farmer beneficial on the radar of the downstate majority, I guess I would call it?
Well, I join safety in numbers.
Yeah.
Also one voice.
Yeah.
There's organizations, again, the Farm Bureau pulls a lot of weight in the assembly because of it just does. And I know their logo flipping through memos, and I see the Farm Bureau. I always set that one because I want to read that one, because this is an agricultural district. Not all of upstate is agricultural. You know, there's assembly people in Rochester, Buffalo, but there are people, and you need to do some research. I can't speak for Donna, but I would invite her to this or go visit her. But I can repeat what Donna said. You know, she is very frustrated with the pushback she gets, because there are people in the Assembly and the Senate who are devout vegans. And there's one guy who is literally wants to do away with farms in the Senate. and I can't remember his name, but it's not too hard to Google his name and it comes right up, and it's right on his New York State Assembly page. You know, he wants everything to be a green plant-based food flavored to taste like pork or chicken, and it's scary that there's somebody that has that bully pulpit voice saying such things that are so detrimental to us, but he got elected. And
Well, I mean, Ken Ryan and his son Patrick were sending out some emails recently about, it was one of those Massachusetts universities, Western Massachusetts, that was not gonna have dairy products, Ken, because the dairy farming promoted increased greenhouse gas emissions because of cows burping. Anyway, no, that's
But
a
they're
real,
serious.
that's a real thing in agriculture, and it's not like it doesn't have an impact. But if they're so, I mean, I think that's why it's helpful to have Donna there. If there's that much motivation, again, some of it could be beneficial to farmers. That is something we got to work on. So Brad and I were already planning on doing. So I had not really thought about the New York State aspect of it, but Brad and I had talked about the federal aspect. So we'll probably, maybe Brad, we can get something on going sooner rather than later, but then ultimately would go on to the year-end policy promotion. Is that, yeah, for probably it'd be activities that sequester carbon that put money in the pocket of farmers, like planting trees and increasing soil organic matter. Does that sound right, Brad? Are you still there?
Yes, I'm with you.
All right. Well, we'll try and work. We've been working on that. We'll try and get something to Joe and then to Donna. Okay. Thanks, Joe.
If you ever get a chance, just do some research on New York State Senator Jabari Brisport. Jabari Brisport. Brisport.
I'm just curious where his district is.
It's in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
And he got elected as a Democrat socialist. And in the cycle of the assembly, the 144th assembly that I'm a part of, the 11 new Republicans got elected and 19 new Democrats. Of the 19 new Democrats, 7-8 of them ran as Democrat socialists. And as they get more of them in the assembly, they're going to drop the Democrat portion of that. And they're running out of New York City as socialists, but that's not a party that is in the assembly. So they go as Democrat socialists. But if you read their agenda, is no rent and nobody has to work, and the mantra is tax the rich. And they're getting elected because it's so easy down there. There's areas of Brooklyn that are so poverty stricken. They have, and they're running unopposed, and it's terrifying.
They need to get a job.
Well, they don't have to. Right now, there are so many help wanted signs, and some of them are places. If I didn't have a job right now, or excuse me, if I weren't in the assembly right now, I'd be working at one of these places. There's a tractor place where they offered to send somebody to school to learn how to maintain. I would love to do that. That's, if you can work at your hobby, you're living the dream. But there's places down in Deposit, a heavy equipment operator will train you. I would be interested in any one of these.
Well, I've heard there was a town here in Chenango County that highway drivers, their drivers have been lured away for other jobs that are paying better, and they don't have enough drivers to maintain the town.
Well, driving and finding a better job, that's competition.
Yeah.
And, I work part-time as a Village of Sherburne police officer. There's other villages in the county that maybe pay more or pay less, but you can go wherever you want. The problem we have is people are getting paid not to work. And New York State keeps finding more ingenious ways to pay people not to work
Yes.
and not to pay their rent. and not to pay their water bills. And it's frustrating. But again, when you read about Senator Brisport, he's a socialist, and that's the agenda they are pushing. They want people beholden to the government. I just happen to be in the party that thinks government should be small and not involved in every aspect of our life. And I'll leave you with socialized medicine. If it doesn't happen this year, it's coming. And I was a police union president, and I negotiated a 3-year contract where the last year of the contract, we got 0 raise because we wanted to keep our health care where it was. Other unions have done the same thing over the course of history. They realize the importance of their health care insurance. If the Democrat socialists get their way, private health insurance in New York State will be outlawed. And we estimate it'll be about $160,000 job loss. People in the insurance industry, healthcare billing and all of that. And the estimate is, now this is the Democrats' estimate, is it's going to cost us $100 billion in additional taxes. But you know, they always try to say, but just think, you won't be paying for this. You can go to any doctor. There is no bill. But it's terrifying. You know, and again, they're very impatient. So do some research on that. The New York State Healthcare Act, when they passed marijuana legislation, that the majority of people wanted that. And I knew it was going to pass. I still voted no, just on principle for the drunk driving, because they're sort of flying the airplane while you're building it. They're letting people smoke anywhere you want, but we don't know how to enforce it. You can smoke anywhere you want, but it's illegal to buy or sell in New York right now. So anyway, but the healthcare one is terrifying to me. And they also don't want to accept federal Medicare and Medicaid dollars. And you know that's the biggest part of our New York State budget, because New York State the federal government, if you accept that Medicare and Medicaid, they tell you how to use it. They don't want that. They want it socialized. And so do some research on that. That's the best thing that can happen, is educate on these things that are going to come up. But the healthcare one is scary. So I would focus on the referendum, because that's something they don't know the outcome of. That's going to be on the ballot for all of New Yorkers to vote on. The Clean Air and Water Act. So, and there's other things that are going to be on that referendum too. And
Okay. Thank you.
all right,
We appreciate your coming. It's been
Thank you.
very informative, and
thank you. Again, I'm too new at this to realize I need to have a filter. So, and I have no clue if this is being recorded or who's on Zoom. So the best thing to do is just be honest, speak your feelings.
amen.
And I do it on the assembly floor, and then they send me the recording, and I said that, didn't I? Out loud. But yesterday I voted yes. I voted yes that ambulance, I didn't know this, and I ran a fire department. It's illegal for firefighters and EMTs to treat animals. And if you've ever been, the worst fires I've ever been at are barn fires. But I've also, my personal dog was resurrected by an EMT at the Norwich Fire Department, and stuck oxygen down its throat and gave chest compressions, and my Labrador came back. But that's illegal. They're not allowed to treat animals. So yesterday I voted yes that firefighters and EMTs, if possible, humans first, they can also tend to animals. I bought, when I was fire chief, snout masks to put over a dog or a cat's snout to give them oxygen, because they're available. So I bought them. I didn't realize we weren't allowed to do it because of my personal experience. But anyway, so yesterday I voted yes, with the caveat that, please, you can't call 911 for a pet emergency, because once this gets made public, people are going to think that. And also, they didn't put in there, if the fire department transports a dog to a vet or they perform service, who gets the bill? It's a concern. And the other thing was, if you or I right now and somebody has a heart attack and I'm doing chest compressions and I do it wrong, I'm protected by the Good Samaritan Act. But EMTs are not. They're considered professionals. And again, because of the litigious state, if you do it wrong, you can be sued. And I was concerned about they need to protect these EMTs who are performing as veterinarians outside their scope. But we also voted that animals are now considered family members in family court. I voted no on that. That they have visitation custody rights, and that's a little too much, but that passed.
Thank you.
All right, folks, thank you so much.
Yep.
All right, take care.
Stop in again. We're here the third Friday every month.
I wish I were in North.
So,
Bye-bye. Thank you.
okay, I'll move down to the agenda, update and farmland protection plan. Yeah. Okay, people had a chance to look it over. I know I got the 50-some pages printed off and tried looking at it. For some reason, I fell asleep. Okay, on the dairy section, dairy pricing, when it gets over talking about the federal milk orders, our government programs, that it sets a minimum, it says processed, I think it should be price, minimum price. For what processors should pay the dairy farmers for their products.
What page are you on?
Mine is page 6, but it seems like when I print things off, it's a different. It's in the dairy pricing.
Yep, page 6
Yeah, page 5
or 5. Sorry, this 6.
for the printout. So it's a minimum price instead of a process. Last paragraph on the page.
Got it.
Okay. And that's about as far as I got looking through it. Anybody else got any comments or concerns? Colleen said we looked it over before, you know, the smaller parts. For some reason, I didn't finish reading last night when I came in from planting corn at 10 o'clock. My wife was happy to have supper done by 10:30. Pictures look great. Did Colleen get any more pictures? I sent her a couple.
Yeah, I received photos from Harry and Jennifer Kelly at Solar Water.
Good.
So yeah, and then I've also reached out. I reached out to Cutix to get some photos from there. I reached out to Maple Farm and Upseelick, which I also have photos from, and a couple other farms that I'm just waiting to hear about.
Okay, good.
doing photos and pieces. But yeah, very grateful for the photos. Thank you.
Anything else on the plan? I think we're gonna move through it real fast today, time-wise.
I just wanted to say I thought it was really well written. I think, you know, it's hard to know what's going to happen with some of these crops, but I thought it was very, very well written and very thoughtful and captured, you know, some of the opportunities accurately. So I think that's all I had to say. It's hard. It's, you know, it's a very busy year, so it's hard to dig in and everything in detail. But where I did dive in and look in detail, I thought it was well written and accurate.
Good. Thank you. Anything else? Do we need to approve this? Not yet. Okay. Then we'll move forward to Ag Development Council.
All we really need to do is, as she continues to do it, you know, eventually we'll have like a final draft, and then we'll actually approve the entire draft, send it to Ag Buildings and Grounds. The board will schedule a public hearing The public hearing will happen, and then they'll decide whether or not to actually adopt it. Once that happens, it goes to Ag and Markets, who does a review, and then they will approve it from there. So we still got another probably 3, 4, 5 months left of review.
I don't know where my mind is. Did we have any inclusions for ag districts? We took care of that?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I thought of that the other day and I couldn't remember, so.
Actually, the public hearing is scheduled for June 14th. And then they'll be adopted, again, sent to Ag and Markets.
Okay, thank you. Ag Development Council, Ken, Brad?
Just very briefly from the last meeting, we funded a micro grant to Cameron Cates for improvements for his vineyard and his winery. And we also approved $600 to help restore the community garden here in Norwich by renting a tractor and rototilling the weeds and kind of getting it restored to plantable condition. So those were the latest things from Ag and Farmland Protection. No, Ag, sorry, there's so many Ag committees from Ag and Natural Resources Development. So, Brad, anything to add?
No, it's, I think he covered it. It's okay.
Okay. There's nothing else. One thing I put on my agenda is in Guilford, we've got a concern with a farm that the animals are hungry.
You need to get closer to the mic. I'm having trouble hearing you.
Okay, in Guilford, we've got a farm where the pastures are literally bare right now. And we've got one resident complaining about the animals being out. The animals, haven't got anything to eat. Thought town board ought to do something, and we don't have an animal control officer for that. So, Ken, you have any?
So this is something that Brad and I deal with all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, to the point where we've actually had a program for this group. And it's very challenging because the fence laws and the laws of animal welfare are designed to protect the farmer from most of them are more than 100 years old, and they're just a challenge when you have a situation like this. There's not too much you can do. So if you can give me a call, Terry, and give me some of the details, I'll dig into it and see what we can do but it is a challenge because one, people will report hungry animals way before the animals might actually be hungry. Mm-hmm. And then the fence law is such that legally, unless it's a bull, which has different set of regulations, animals out and wandering around is not against the law, which is a problem.
Well, one of the problems is they're in the county road.
Well, so then, you get into a situation of
safety.
Well, you get into a safety, and the one thing that we, and now that I'm getting older, words don't always come into my head. There are laws about creating a public nuisance and creating a safety hazard. So, I don't know that we want to get into the details of names and locations right here, but maybe at the end of the meeting, I'll check in with you and we'll see where we can go with it.
Yeah.
This is Brad. As noted, we have addressed some of this in the past and done meetings with for law enforcement. The fence law comes under town law, and it's archaic as noted. And many towns aren't even aware the law is there. And then the other problem you have is, and Farm Bureau has encountered this in other counties where local towns decide to do a law of their own, which is sometimes in violation of ag and markets and current legislation. So, and then the other problem you have is if law enforcement gets involved and they decide to seize the animals, they get a humane outfit from down in the Hudson Valley who really don't know anything about animals here in upstate New York, and the animals are taken down there. And then it becomes, until it's actually addressed to the court, the town can end up paying huge fees for the care of these animals until they've determined what happens to it. So it's a long roundabout procedure, and yes, Ken and I've been working with Ag and Markets on some of these to try and further educate law enforcement on how to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, I remember I attended a program through the Chenango Broom Ag Council many years ago. And this topic came up, and there was a vet there who spoke, and he said, you know, he went out to investigate animal neglect. He said the farmer had cut down a bunch of trees, and he says those animals were chewing on the buds during the winter time, and he says they weren't malnutrition. But the farmer was, had buds from trees cut down, and the animals were okay. So it's all in what the viewer views as to what is right and wrong.
Correct. I was on a case where they were seizing the animals here in Chenango County a number of years ago. And one of these humane outfits was up here to pick up the animals. And they were trying to tell me that the person was in violation because they hadn't had a vet there. This person only had a few horses, and I was standing right next to the New York State veterinarian, and he said to them, a vet is not going to come out to a property for 2 or 3 horses. So that's totally taboo. But that was the thinking coming out of these people down in the city.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So disorderly conduct, I think, became this. The issue of cows in the road is and that was the one thing that I came across that could be handled. And then we don't want to get into too much. Have you seen the animals, Terry?
I didn't see the animals, but I looked at the pasture on the way over, and it's mud. It's not
Right.
green.
Well, again, just to finish up, and I think anybody who raises large animals will get complaints about animal welfare. It doesn't matter
Right.
what the condition of the animals are. That's just a foregone conclusion. And so that's the big challenge. So it's kind of a 2-part thing where you have to determine whether there is actually any animal neglect, because oftentimes there's not. Maybe I really would say most of the time there isn't. The issue of defense laws, I mean, unfortunately, they're so archaic that if Farmer A has all his heifers get out onto Farmer B's property, the law says it's Farmer B's fault for not keeping that fence up. And that it's the person who the animals got onto their land. Both parties have responsibility for the fence, because it's that old idea. The neighbors work together to make the fence.
I don't think my neighbors would like it when they go running across the golf course.
No, but they bear responsibility for the fence according to the law. Okay,
Um,
let's move on.
Only if there's both parties own animals. Lawyers got involved in that, and if one party doesn't have animals, they don't have to maintain any of the fence. And as far as you had mentioned, humane officer, the SPCA used to employ one. The last one was AJ Black, and they have done away with that because they could claim they couldn't afford it. So, and it's Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, not dogs and cats. So that means they should be involved in all of this, but try and get them to do that.
So Ken, who legally has the right to determine if an animal is being abused?
Veterinary. This all is based on getting a veterinary. New York State licensed professional.
Right, well, and the state employs veterinarians, and that's ultimately who will be a state vet, and then there's vets across the region. So there's a New York State vet that we could call and have a look at those animals and to determine whether, but sometimes you can just do a drive-by and see what the body score of the animals is. So, all right, it's running late.
Okay. What have you got? We have another sheet here.
Sandy's sitting over here.
Sandy, I'll move to you before we go around, do our go around on this ag or local food system update.
Yes, I'm Sandy Pierce. I'm a volunteer for the nonprofit that administers the public market in Norwich, but we also provide support services for other venues for people getting local products. It's going on 4 years now since a diverse group of people first asked the county to look into a local food system. And this diverse group of people consists of farmers, healthcare workers, nutrition agencies, educators, etc. And we presented a video of a southern state where a community helped the tobacco farmers transition into providing food. And they're now food independent. Now, obviously, their demographics are totally different than ours. We have unique system, we have unique difficulties with the dairy industry, and many of the dairy farmers are moving to producing food. Back in 2016, the United Way research showed that Chenango County was 46% at and below poverty. 2 years later, at a meeting, one of the local agencies said that it was closer to 75%. And now with the pandemic, I'm sure it's probably a lot worse than that. From 2005 to 2015, the nutritional programs had been providing farmers with 1/3 to 1/2 of their income at the public market. But the venues for using these benefits have shrunk considerably. In 2016, Norwich Bid permanently closed down the Saturday half of the public market, so those nutritional programs are no longer offered on the weekends. Of the 7 county farmers markets, only 2 provide the FMP program. If you look at the chart that I passed out, list the 7 markets. The only 2 markets that provide the FMP are the Wednesday in Norwich and Coventry on Thursday. The other farmers markets, many of them are struggling to find out how to do it, but it's not rocket science, but it is time consuming and it's tedious. And we're trying to help those markets get on board to be able to provide these nutritional programs. Unfortunately, the leader of one of the markets actually said, and this is a quote, direct quote, "We don't want that type of person shopping at our market." So we have some resistance to offering these programs. Now, the chart shows other local food initiatives also, but they don't provide the programs yet either. Last week, we approached the ABC again about looking into the possibility of seeing how we could provide a local food system that would help both the consumer and the farmer. And this same reluctance is there, but some of the points are valid. We don't have the topsoil in Chenango County for large-scale vegetable production, but we can provide meat with our farms. And our small farms are beginning to increase. We've got more and more people coming up having these mini farms, and they're planting fruit trees, they're planting berries, they want to do gardens, etc. And a couple of years ago, Marjorie Davis had a very good comment that is extremely true. She said it's just easier to go to the grocery store to get your food. One person on the ADC said, well, why doesn't your nonprofit do it? And obviously the answer is we're just too small. And this has to be, excuse me, has to be a countywide effort that supports all of the current initiatives, which we have several, and not supplant them, but something that's going to help. We need to study and collect the data on each of these components. Now on this chart, we have it broken down into different segments of the process. And when I talked to people about last week's ADC meeting, they suggested that it's a communication breakdown. Each person has their own idea of what a local food system is. So one of our volunteers suggested we make this into a picture. So that's what this chart is going to try to do, is to give you a picture of what our current situation is and what our needs are in Chenango County. The top two boxes represent probably mostly the large farms that just directly sell to the wholesale market. On the left would be the farms that have no cell phone and or internet service. The box on the right is those with the internet services. The next box down, the next two boxes on the left are the growing numbers of farms that are beginning to sell directly to the consumer. And on the left are those without service, and on the right are those with service. And the farmers that are without service need a lot of help to be able to access the consumers. The center box shows the venues where the consumers can currently obtain local foods. Underneath that box is the box for the consumer and how they currently pay for or obtain the local food. A larger number beginning to the dotted line box on the left, the people, the consumers that qualify for the nutritional programs. We've got 4 currently in the county. The FMNP Senior, FMNP WIC. I've got arrows going up to where people can obtain these. We've got a farm in Plymouth on the left side that has those no internet services. And the FMNP program is very shortly going to be switching to digital. So all of the people that are relying on the paper products they're not going to be able to do it anymore. And then there are 2 farms, another farm in Plymouth and a farm in Green, and I don't know if they have internet service or not. Then the FMNP program for the 2 farmers markets, one is the Norwich on Wednesday, the other one is Coventry, and I don't know if Coventry has internet service or not. The other program is the SNAP program and the Fresh Connect. And currently, the only place people can use these services are at the Wednesday Norwich Farmers Market. We qualified again with Ag and Markets that for every $5 a person puts on their SNAP card, we can provide them with a free Fresh Connect check. And the SNAP and Fresh Connect is not just produce, it's also meat, eggs, baked goods, etc. The center box for customers, more and more people are relying on buying online and using credit cards. The Wednesday market provides this service for all of the vendors. And I have an arrow going up with a dotted line. I don't know about the other venues. I don't know which ones are able to do that or not. Moving on down, we're going to skip the next box and go down to the bottom, the transportation system. Actually, there was one tiny little positive that the pandemic provided. We now have quite a few people who are going out and shopping for people. We've got entrepreneurs who are actually doing this. The Norwich Farmers Market has, back in 2018, we started going mobile. We are now picking up the 4 farms and delivering to people. And at the ADC meeting, Brad had mentioned another organization that is coming into the area to collect and to distribute farm products. And he's going to give us more information on that. Then going to the box above the transportation, and this is where we're hoping that help can be provided. Farmers markets all over the country, even before the pandemic, started going online, and people could order ahead of time, pay through credit card, etc., and then just pick up at the farmers market. More and more people in the pandemic are beginning to shop online. So what we are approaching you in the county about is there a way that we can access the money that is out there for food systems? Chenango County is a food desert. We have people in the outlying communities since the bus system broke down that have a hard time. Our nonprofit is working with Ag and Markets to expand the mobile part of this so that we can go out into the communities and be able to provide the SNAP and the FMNP program for the outlying communities. But we need to have money provided for food systems to set up an online shopping. We need to make it as easy as possible for consumers to buy local products. Pay in advance. I think that was one of the difficulties of the CNY bounty when we tried this several years ago. People weren't required to pay in advance, but just about everybody now knows if you order something online, you pay for it in advance. So just the software programs for farmers markets are improving and increasing so that we can gradually switch to get SNAP through that, credit cards, etc. So we're hoping that this committee or ADC or somebody in the county can find a way, find an organization, find a way to access the grant money to put together an online shopping system for farmers and for consumers. So that's why I'm here, just to give you an update of where we are. This chart, by the way, is just, I saw some more errors on it, but we need information to put on this chart to find out how to do this and who can benefit and what the needs are for each of these categories.
Sounds like the ADC council has,
I can't hear you.
sounds like the ADC council, has the information with the extension that you've got the resources to pull some of this information together from what other counties and regions are doing.
Sandy, hit your mic so that you can hear. Or when someone's talking, hit your mic, that way you can hear it through the speaker.
So it sounds like ADC council with, they're tied to extension. Extension would have the resources to find other areas in what they're doing.
The AFPB is one of your goals is marketing for farmers. That's why I'm here. ADC said last week, they didn't have the resources. Anyway.
Well, the ADC, and apologies to Sandy, the ADC, it depends on what you're looking for. The ADC is not an entity that can write grants. And so Sandy, I'm not trying to say Sandy was concerned. So Sandy knows that. I just want to make it clear. Sandy knows. So the ADC is not able to get money. Extension did write a grant to help farmers. We wrote a grant a while back. It was created a food box program that was funded through the federal government, where we collected, help people order online and help people collect and got vegetables from farmers to deliver to consumers. And what we found when we ran that program is there just weren't a lot of people growing vegetables in the county period for direct sale to consumers, and that there just wasn't very much interest in at that time creating a system like the one that Brad has described. What's the name of it, Brad? Off the Muck?
Yes, Off the Muck Market, which will market in Chenango County, and they will also take produce from Chenango County and help producers market the product. So they're already here and available to producers that are interested.
How do we get the consumers, giving the consumer an easier access? People want to just.
The consumer can order direct from them, and they're available in Facebook and online. So it's easy to work with.
But it's education that's hard. Getting people to want that. That's going to be the hard sell.
True.
Consumer needs to have an easy access. They want to.
Well,
or
e-
they want to
everything is done through Facebook and the internet now. So it's, as Terry noted, it's an education issue. There's a flood of stuff out there, so it's hard to get them keyed in on the things they need.
Not for the half of the county that doesn't have internet service.
That's why we're working on broadband.
Okay, thank you.
Broadband's a constant fight that we've been working on for the past 3 years, and we're actually working on some grant applications right now that will serve a few areas. But again, we would need millions of dollars to make it available to everyone in this county.
In case anyone can't hear me. I've noticed recently, well, actually in Sherburne, we have 2 locations where there's been a lot of utility trucks. They've been running a lot of cable throughout the county. I was just on Route 80 the other night coming home, and they were 7 o'clock at night. They're on Route 80 outside of Smyrna, running towards that Felix, running cable. That
Can't hear you. Get closer to the mic.
Spectrum is in the county doing a lot of that on our road too.
Yeah, I thought it was probably the Spectrum, because I've noticed through utility values that Spectrum's values have increased significantly. But that should widen up some of the broadband capabilities that Spectrum's running through. I haven't seen the map though where they're running. Then probably 50 in the 2 locations.
That information is proprietary, isn't it, Shane? So that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, the companies don't need to tell us where they're going.
Right.
But I mean, the FCC maps show it, but again, they're self-reported by the companies. So again, yeah. But yeah, we're working on a grant. Southern Tier 8, obviously with more federal funding coming out, they're working on grants as well. We have meetings bi-weekly to try and figure this out. But again, unless there's money available and we have the capacity to write those grants to make it happen, we're kind of relying on those companies to expand where needed.
I have an idea though, because if they're going along with right away through town, it should be appropriate.
Right. So one of the problems we're having right now with public right-of-ways is that New York State DOT has what's called Perm 75. And that's a new permitting process where any fiber optics or whatever going through the state right-of-way has to file a permit with New York State DOT. So what we found is grant applications that use the New York State DOT right-of-way, about 1/3 of the grant cost is going to DOT to pay that fee, whereas it could have been used other places. So right now we're trying to get legislation through to kind of nix that, where municipalities, not-for-profits, other providers want to pay that.
But I thought they had to notify the municipality when they were coming through though. The reason they say that is because every year, New York State, not real property services anymore, tax and finance, send out a questionnaire to every town clerk. It gets fed to the assessor, asking about any new utilities installed in the public right of way.
Yeah, they're supposed to do franchise agreements. And I can tell you from the town board meeting I attended this week from the town of Smithville, a lot of times those companies never provide those contracts and never get them signed. So the town of Smithville, I think it was Spectrum or Charter, had been in the town for the last 5+ years and still didn't have the contract on file and didn't know that. So, I mean, again, it's knowledge too.
What we're proposing is an online service to help those people who do not have internet service. We're proposing that, that we fill in that gap.
But if you don't have service, how are you going to do it online? That's the problem.
We're doing it now. The 4 farms, 2 of the 4 farms that we're providing services for, we do it through phone call. I go to the farms to pick up the product. It's tedious, but it's not rocket science that we can provide this support.
Must be we just lost signal. Okay, they're bringing it back. So, anything else before we move on? Because we're getting late. I still got work to do at home somehow.
It's are you doing reports from everyone?
Yep, Brad.
Um, we were recently in North Carolina. I went down to see my grandson, and I did the conference call as mentioned with Assemblywoman Lepardo. And as noted, she is very supportive of agriculture and works hard with Farm Bureau to and create awareness and support on what we're working on. We're also reaching out to Senator Schumer. We're going to be doing something with him down the road, either personally or by a teleconference. The other thing, while I was in Carolina, I met with a person, a veteran that I've worked with before, who is doing an excellent job, and I'd like to see more of that here in New York, of educating and helping veterans get involved in agriculture. Some of the funding he gets is through the local college, and they're very supportive of helping him do the training program, and it's becoming very successful in getting veterans involved in all aspects of agriculture. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be farmers. Some of them may be just producing crops for local marketing, but they provide all kinds of training for that. And I'll meet with him the next time I go down to get more details on it. I met him a number of years ago at a national program encouraging the same thing. So I think that's kind of the key things we've been working on, even though thanks to the ability to use the internet, we were able to teleconference with Assembly and Senate people as well. So, and in the Carolinas, by the way, hardly anybody wears masks. It's more normal than New York. Unless there's a mandate, they don't require masks in most of the places. So that's some of what's going on in other parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Shane? John?
Yes, I have a report from Elena Covington, USDA NRCS, and EQIP proposals have rolled out. It doesn't look like there will be a second round of funding. There were 14 applications for funding for entire term in Chenango County. They consisted of forest management plan, high tunnels, forest implementation, pollinator habitat, and grazing management plans. No farmlands, no farmsteads were funded for the Broome, Chenango, Chemung, Tioga County teams, which is odd, but there weren't. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Ken?
Just very briefly, we are working on a grant for Chobani to provide training and support in a variety of forms for farmers who are interested in starting beef and sheep operations. So we have 3 different videos underway and have been providing additional support for farmers in the region who are interested in growing their beef and sheep operations or starting a new one. So that's a special focus. Obviously, we're providing ongoing support through our dairy and field crop team for other items.
Thank you. Steve?
No, I don't have anything.
You mean your season's died down a little bit?
Season's died down. It is tentative roll time. If there was any changes in assessment, those notices would have been out to anybody right now.
But it's not, the motorcycle season's not dying down.
Motorcycle
just starting up.
Okay. Rob, do you have anything you want to let us know about?
No, I don't have anything to report this time, but thank you for asking.
Okay. This week, I was on a forum with American Dairy Association Dairy Council, and they asked 8 farmers, 8 of us, to participate in their staff training. And the thing that the staff likes to hear about is our experiences on the farm. And they said that for them, they don't understand the farm, all of them, because, you know, they don't have that background. But I think there were 7 or 8 in the group that I was in a breakout with. They asked me about, you know, how many generations on the farm. They asked about what would I do if I wasn't farming it. I said, you know, that's a hard question because I don't know what else I would be doing. They, you know, it was interesting, and I got a comment back yesterday, a thank you card, and he said he was very glad to hear from the farms that, because that's the message they're trying to get out. He worked with the youth, and it would be school programs, and he said that as dairy farmers, we are fortunate that we are in school. He says a lot of groups have been kicked out, but the American Dairy Association is able to get in there and give a positive message. And one of the reasons that we are in there is that the consumers trust farmers a lot more than they trust the politicians. They trust, you know, the farmers are fairly well regarded as far as respect for what we do. And I think that speaks a lot about farming. I think for Joe, you know, Assemblyman Angelino, if his downstate people could realize what agriculture does for this state, there wouldn't be quite so many detrimental bills. And I don't know, it's just a problem of education and miseducation that I know I have Facebook. I look at it a couple times a day. There's a lot of stuff out there that doesn't need to be on there. So, and I guess I'll end it with that.
I do have one more thing, Terry, is the county's been working on the hazard mitigation plan, and one of the public comment feedbacks we had was in some of the low-lying river areas, they ought to be turned into flood parks. And by flood parks, what they mean is by, you know, having almost like wetland areas where flood waters can sit in there and just go away, you know, basically have like a storage area for flood waters rather than being either developed or other, you know, opportunities. So I was just curious on what you guys thought about, you know, that, knowing that a lot of those down on the flat areas are farm fields. But again, you know, certain fields, I wonder how productive they are if they keep flooding, you know, year after year as it is. So I was just curious what your thoughts on where that.
My thoughts on that, since I own some of that land, is that's the best land I've got. You know, I may lose some topsoil, but I may gain somebody else's nutrients when it floods like that. And I think, you know, rather than just making so-called green areas that have to be maintained, let the farmer maintain it as cropland, or, you know, even if they have conservation areas around the edge to protect from erosion, but it still needs to be, because every time you take a crop, you grow a crop, you plow down the residue, you've got some carbon that you're sequestering. So I think that's, you know, keep it as cropland. I've got fields with wet spots in, but my philosophy is I plow right through that wet spot and it may drain out. And I did that a couple weeks ago, so.
You know, speaking for the town of Afton, all of our river bottom land is farm. The Soil and Water District does a good job in trying to promote buffer zones along creeks and rivers. And those are things that should be implemented and are a great asset to farmland. They do retain it. But like Terry said, occasionally you do lose some topsoil, but you do gain nutrient values from flooding. To give up that farmland, cultivating that farmland and utilizing it would be devastating to many, if not all of the farms in New York, certainly in Afton.
So just to add on to that, there are some river bottom soils that are poorly drained. You know, I just think of one in Otselic, and you know, at a certain level, three feet above average river level, it's unbelievably productive cropland. But then at a certain point, it's just low and wet, and it isn't really productive. You know, and so that might be a candidate where, you know, you just look at the soil map. If it says state prime ag land, no. If it's too wet to do anything else, then you pay the farmer to fence it out or do whatever and let it grow up to.
Or grow a hay crop on it that would, you know, that would be.
And they did have that, but that was just a regular part of soil and water practice, wasn't it, for forever, especially with Bob Almy.
Right. I mean, I can tell you that the parcel that they were looking at or commenting on was the area right around the Oxford wastewater treatment plant, that whole stretch down through there. That's, you know, any good rain has a good 6 inches to 3 feet of water any given time. So that was specifically the area they were looking at. So what we had to do is, for our hazard mitigation plan, the plan was up for public comment. And in that plan, there's an annex, which is a specific document related to each town, village, whatever. So that person had made a comment of, you know, how can we help with hazard mitigation and flood control, is rather than, you know, making sure that that area isn't buildable to make it into like a flood park, or, you know, how do we keep that as an area that can, well, and I think that area is, or at least zoned as a floodway. But again, I was just curious. I mean, I knew you guys' answer. It was more of a making sure that I knew what your answer was.
Well, the other thing about that, as I look at it, seems like the biggest problem in a few spots are low spots that don't drain out. They just hold the water. And if they had a slight diversion, it would drain off quicker. That's, you know, kind of what it needs, or at least in my mind, just a slight diversion to, instead of holding water.
About 5 years ago, give or take, I believe it was NYMER did a presentation on just that. And it was very informative, and it had to do with an area that flooded, river bottom, and they turned it into a water recreation park. And, you know, it was very interesting. You may be able to find that. It wouldn't work for all areas, but, you know, for some areas, it not only answered the question about water retention and flooding, it created a revenue stream for that area.
Once it's a swamp, government gets involved and you can't touch it.
Yep. Anything else come before us? George?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Brad's moved to adjourn. Steve seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next month.